Hello, Camp Grime staff. This is your program director, Clint Long, and just giving you another installment of Camp Grime Goes Online. Sorry, it's been a while since we put a video out. Me and Alan had made one, and I went to upload it to YouTube, and the sound didn't work. But considering we're in the middle of this pandemic, as many of you know, I teach school. I was able to discover some resources to do some better quality recording. So I hope you like this recording. I found that this recording platform I'm using called Screencastify is really user friendly and works really great. Has really good sound. And on my school computer, which is what I'm using it from, I get it for free, and I can make as long as videos I want to, which is really what I needed to do. So it's probably a good thing I was working for Catawba County Schools, because I was not paying $50 a year just to record videos for you guys. Um, so I wanted to talk to you today. The training I'm going to give you guys through an online version format is called uh, is the diversity training that we need to do. And this is not going to be a long video, as some of them in the past have. And this will be a very short training, but it's a very important training as well. As with all trainings that I'm doing online, they will have a Google form attached to them that is a um, knowledge check to make sure that you really listen to what I had to say, and that I can prove when NCAP, National Camp Accreditation Process, comes around. I can prove that I've trained you guys and you've heard me, at least you've heard the knowledge, and that you can remember the knowledge. That way, when it comes to camp, you can apply that knowledge. I really appreciate you guys being flexible with us during these interesting times that were already pretty interesting. All things considered, with how we were trying to run camp this summer and the changes we're making, and with now the pandemic as well. So, cultural diversity. Okay. So many people say, well, what is cultural diversity? And how does that apply to staff? Well, I look at it this way. One of the big things that comes to mind, is Americans, we have a culture. Most definitely, we definitely have a national culture. I think culture can be broken down into several groups. I think it can be broken down into the state level, to the county level, because Mecklenburg County definitely has a different culture than um, McDowell County, where our camp is located. And we're bringing in people from other counties across the state too, to work at our camp. And I think the South, the southeastern United States, the South as we call it, we have the reputation of, being hospitable, French port sitting, sweet tea drinking people. That's our culture. We have to remember that culture is all of the social aspects that make up a particular group of people. We all share a different culture. And you have to remember that um, our families have different cultures. I'm for sure my family dynamic is different from your family's dynamic. A lot of people think that skin color makes up a culture. It does not. Um, that's called stereotyping when we define things that way. But and you want to know, well, how does this relate to camp? I've talked about a lot there in a very short amount of time. Well, it relates to camp because each week we have 500 plus people on camp. Do you think they all have a different culture? Yes, they do. And we have to be able to meet those. We have to be able to meet them on their level of what their culture is. That way we can impart the skills and the scout law and the scout oath into their lives to fulfill that obligation that we have as a camp staff. And remember, that obligation from our first video that me and Alan posted was to teach all scouts to the values and the ethics, to make moral and ethical decisions based on the scout oath and scout law. So that's our end goal. And we can't do that if we have any biases or stereotypes against the different cultures we have in camp. So that's the big thing, because if you think with me about this, ladies and gentlemen, we've all had times where we've have felt different as a person in part of a group. Some of you, that might be for the first time this summer when you step on to become a staff member for the first time. I'll never forget the first time I was on staff at a local camp, Bud Shield. Some of you guys are familiar with that camp. I'll never forget that opportunity that I had and how different it felt because I was a part of that camp staff culture. Because we have a culture as a camp staff too, how we treat our other staff members, how we treat our customers, um, and that makes up the culture of our camp. So our camp has a culture as well. So as you've seen, we all have different kinds. We're all bringing different cultures to the table. This summer, we're bringing our family culture. We're bringing our regional culture, the Southern culture. We're bringing our camp culture, and we're bringing our individual culture as well. We all have different social webs of interaction with the groups of people that we interact with, and that defines our culture. For example, I'm a music person. That makes my mind is a little bit different than, say, an engineer or a businessman. So I may have a different culture. My professional world that I relate to is too. So you're saying, okay, Clint, yeah, we get it. There's lots of different culture. Exactly. There's many levels of culture. And in those many levels of culture, there's even more differences, more social interaction differences, more values and belief system differences. Within music alone, there's four major ones, four major cultural identities that people that teach music kind of associate themselves with. And I've seen it in camps too. How you structure a program. There's people that ascribe to open program. There's people that ascribe to everything must be scheduled. And there's people that are in the middle of it too. So we all have different camp cultures. There's some people that walk onto a camp and they say, this is our home. And then there's some staffs that believe their camp is their camp and you have to do it this way because you're on their camp and you have to do it a certain way. So the diversity of culture is just extensive. And, we live in a time where people, thankfully, appreciate that and understand that, I would guess, more than previously history has. But you're saying, Clint, you're talking a lot about culture, but you're really not relating it to camp. Well, let me relate it to camp. So we're going to be seeing all these cultures come to camp. Every single one of them. We're going to see our camp culture come to camp. We're going to see people's personal culture, their family culture, their regional culture, and their national culture come to camp. Now, thankfully, our national culture should all theoretically be the same. Regional culture, not so much. We could have some troops come in from, let's say, New York. We could have some staff members that come in from outside of this region. And they could become a part of our camp culture, and they're going to bring a different aspect to that. We could have troops that come outside the region. We've got some that are coming from Louisiana. We have some that are coming from Florida. Those are different state cultures that we have bringing to camp. And then, so think about all the individual cultures and family dynamics that'll be represented here at camp, because we'll have troops that have come in that don't understand our camp culture, how we have conducted ourselves as a staff, our processes, our procedures, our expectations from troops. So we have to be able to adapt to that and accommodate them into their week at summer camp. And that's the biggest thing I want to talk to you all about today is, although we've got these differences, everyone's bringing it in. The best thing we can do as a staff is to be accepting and understanding. You have troops that come to camp that think, and Alan has mentioned this before many, many times, that think summer camp should be their program. That is their troops' culture. Some of them, this is the only camping trip they may do the entire year. Others, this is nothing because they go camping all the time. They have great program in their troop. Okay? We have to meet the needs of the cultural needs of that troop, that this is the only event they do the entire year, from the troop that's well run, that's boy led, that does a lot, runs a great program all the time. We have to meet their needs just as we meet the needs of um, troops that are not doing that as well. So, how do we do that? How do we do that as a staff? Except in your classes, don't don't think more highly of a scout from one troop. Maybe you have a history with that troop. Don't think more highly of that scout or less of that scout from where they come from. Each scout is there to learn, and treat each scout. Don't hold scouts to different standards. That's the big thing is what you require of one scout require of all the scouts in your classes as well. And a big thing with diversity is just being sure you treat everyone equitably. Equitably. What does that mean? Okay. What does the word equitable mean? Okay. A little different from equal. Okay. Equitable. Equitable means that we're holding everyone to the same standard. Fair enough. I'm going to hold myself to the same standard that I hold you guys to. That means I need to show up to events on time. If I tell you to be at assembly at 7:05 in the morning, I will be there at 7:05 as I expect you to be there at 7:05. I won't roll up at 7:07. Okay, that's not how I roll. If you are supposed to be there, I am supposed to be there. I hold myself to the same equitable standard that you do. Now, what does that do? By setting equitable standards for us all, that makes our staff equal. So we have to have standards and practices that make things equitable, so we are equal. Okay, that's how we achieve equality, is by setting equitable standards. Okay, standards that everyone can meet no matter what they come from. And that's one of the, I guess, the great things about scouts is that we are all equal because we've had some equitable standards set for us, such as the Scout Oath and the Scout Law. So how does this look? Again, how does this apply? When scouts are acting up in your class, you don't say, hey, we don't do that. I mean, that's an okay response, but say, hey, does that follow the Scout Oath? Hey, does that follow the Scout Law? Use those, hold them to those standards that we have set for us. If you see a fellow staff member not dressing in the right uniform, remind them why we use the uniform. It makes us equal. It makes none of us better than the other. So you're going to see scouts that don't use the uniform this summer like they're supposed to as well. But does that make them any way less of a scout? Not really. They're not using the uniform as intended for it to use, but that doesn't mean we should treat them any differently. The biggest thing about these diversity trainings is to say, just because someone is a little different than you, it doesn't mean we treat them differently. We treat everyone with equitable standards. And thankfully, our founder, Robert Baden-Powell, set out many of those for us to follow and use as guidelines to help really guide scouting through. And one of the biggest things that scouting has had thrown at it here in the last couple of years is that the fact that our gender diversity has really changed in scouting. Now that we have Scouts BSA, we have females in scouting. And you have to understand that, like I said earlier, we have to treat them just like they're scouts. Just like we went around treating scouts forever when we were all male. We have to treat them just like we operated with scouts before they were females. That's what a lot of people, when I was a camp director last year, it was the first year, we had Scouts BSA. I had the question of, well, we should treat them differently because they're girls. No, we don't. That's not creating equality. And if anything, that's kind of pushing them to the side, and we don't want that. We don't want to single them out. That's the whole thing about diversity, ladies and gentlemen. If I could stress any point to you, is diversity and promoting diversity in our camps is not singling people out because they have difference. It's including them in because of their differences. That'll probably be on the knowledge check, FYI. So that's the biggest thing. And I told and I stressed each week that I had a female troop at my camp, they are scouts. Just like all male troops are scouts, all female troops are scouts. Hold them to the equal standard. Yes, we have to make some accommodations, like maybe different shower times, so on and so forth. You guys have probably heard a lot about that. But just as they are, just as they are just new to the fold, just because they have a different gender does not mean we treat them any differently. So I've talked about a lot in this diversity training. Let me look over my lesson plan here and make sure that I discussed everything I wanted to discuss. I talked about how we're all different. We all have a different cultural identity that can be based on many different things. Where we're from, our family, our scout troop. There are many different ways that we are all have different cultural identities, and each of those is different depending on our background. And how that applies to camp is we have to treat everyone equitably. So that way we are equal and we're not treating anyone different. That's going to help your scouts learn. It's going to help your scouts grow. It's going to keep your scouts coming back to camp as long as we promote diversity as a good thing. It's an opportunity for us as scouts to really practice the scout oath and scout law, to help other people at all times, because when we're including people, we're helping them. Really, if you think about it, we're promoting their self-esteem, that they are part of this group, and people want to feel wanted. I don't care if you're an introvert, extrovert, whatever. There's a deep desire of people, and one of the most fundamental basic human things, and they teach you this in the psychology, is that people feel a need to belong. And really that's what this diversity training is all about, treating people equally so they feel like they belong to a bigger group. And scouting can do much more if we're all act like we just want to be a group and we want to be a team. And that'll be the same for our staff this summer. Our staff, we're going to be a diverse set of backgrounds. Everybody's going to teach differently, look differently, act differently. But if we use that as a strength and not a weakness, we're going to have a great summer, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I hope you've enjoyed me sitting here talking about diversity and how it relates to camp. I hope you got something from it. I hope you've learned from it and you can use it and apply it to camp. And you'll see me, maybe hopefully Alan, some more as well, as we continue to create videos to help train our staff for camp this summer. Thank you guys.